Want to catch you in a Google. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It is Tuesday, April 14th, day before tax day. Make sure you get your filings in. We are beginning work this week on H508, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the city of Burlington. And we are reviewing and considering a Senate proposal of amendment to said charter. Council, doing it.
Right. For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm here covering for my colleague, Mr. Gene Anderson. So you have this charter amendment in front of you. You know, the House sent over language to the Senate. The Senate has made a change, so I'll walk through that pretty quickly. It's relatively straightforward, just to kind of reorient the committee. I'll just kind of quickly mention what the House version was. Just sent a request. Okay, good to. So this is the language that was passed by the House. Just a quick reminder, you know, this is about the district boundaries for the city of Burlington and, you know, when the city has authority to change or alter those district boundaries. And so you're striking out all the language that was passed years ago that outlines the specific boundaries, and you're giving the city council the authority to then change those boundaries under certain circumstances. And the key sentence is really going to be on line 21 and then moving to the top of page 11 here, where you all had it to say that the changes shall not be made more frequently than once in every 5 years. And the other, you know, key languages on lines 20, where, you know, the boundaries can be changed in order to provide an equal division of population among them in accordance with data produced by U.S. Census Bureau. But then you had this limitation that the changes shall not be made more frequently than once every 5 years. And the Senate has altered that. First off, there was the addition here on line 11, where they said that you can make changes to boundaries of election areas pursuant to this section. So as you can see, then there's still the language of in order to provide an equal division of population. So that hasn't changed. It's just an identification that it can be done pursuant to this section. The key thing is lines 13, 14, and 15. Where you all said that it can't be done more frequently than once every 5 years. This language says that the city council may change election area boundaries following the taking of the decennial census and whenever necessary to correct an unconstitutional division of population. Mm-hmm. That could conceivably happen more than once in a 5-year period, in which case the city council would need to take steps to make that change. So that's the amendment from the Senate, and that's the change.
Okay. Hang on 1 second. I just wanted to jump in right here real quick. And so in conversations I had with some folks in and around the ward configurations, one of the pieces, my understanding was they're doing so much building in Burlington right now, especially with vertical stack and pack housing, that they are that term. But they have seen, and they're also anticipating scenarios where this building boom could skew district numbers, and they want to be aware of that, not to have the at whack with the population. Sorry, my brain's not really focused this morning. So that was something I had heard from folks with the as to why here. Apologies, Rep. Hengo, then Waters.
Thank you. That was the first part of my question. I just wanted to make sure that that's where that came from. And it sounds like it is. And the second thing is there a definition of unconstitutional division of population?
There's not a definition, but the Constitution requires under the Equal Protection Clause that individuals' vote is essentially counted, you know, with the same weight. And so if you have, you know, districts that are not designed such to have an equal distribution among the population, then it could be unconstitutional.
So I wonder how that's going to be determined, if there's going to be a specific process to determine that.
Potentially defer to the city as to how they would go about making those determinations. But as the chair mentioned, you could have situations where in a municipality, you have certain housing developments that go into a specific ward area that, although it may only be a few thousand individuals moving there, it could shift the population, away from other areas such that they need to be redrawn. How they would go about making that determination of when they would make those reviews, or, how their attorney's office would go about that, I would defer to them.
So I will ask the rest of the table if anybody remembers what the city of Burlington said about that, because I think it came up in testimony, and does anyone know what they said.
There's a bill activity tab.
Yeah.
Right.
On the bill itself.
Why am I asking
Red
this?
Water's in?
Sorry.
Well, I just, weirdly opened exactly to the page I needed for my notes on the charter.
It was
No.
on May 2025.
Oh. No, this is January 7th
Yeah,
of
we did
this
this
year.
year.
So, Rep. Handel, what was your question then
Is
about,
how the city is going to determine when to call this special
oh,
redistricting.
I think according to what I have just found here is that it says they wanted to do it as necessary. Right? Like,
That's what I was.
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. Because I don't know what criteria they're going to use to call for this.
Well, if I may, it says like census data and like other stuff. Rep. Nugent really wants to say something. Rep. Nugent.
He's got the same question as me, I bet.
I think what they said was that the census does these interim counts that they use statistical analysis to guess, or that's a bad word. They can figure out.
Own.
Yeah. They can change. I also had the same question because I don't think it's unconstitutional to wait every 10 years either. So that's my issue with this language, but.
Council, did you want to say something?
Two things. I mean, I think it could conceivably be unconstitutional if you have some sort of significant population shift in an area. So it's not required that it have to be done every 10 years. You have the census, and so then states and municipalities will look every 10 years because that's when we do the census. So it is conceivable that it could occur or something could become unconstitutional before, a 10-year period. And then the last point I was going to make, I think you mentioned it, Mr. Chair, it was brought up. It is based on, the limitation in the section says that it is based on data that's produced by the U.S. Census Bureau, which is updated. I don't know how frequently it's updated, but it's not every 10 years they do update it more frequently than that. But there is the limitation that the city has to base it on that information. So the city wouldn't just be basing it on some sort of alternate set of population criteria that doesn't have some basis in the U.S. Census Bureau's data.
My question
Oh,
is.
I got Waters
Sorry.
Evans. And I got VL, and I got you.
so I guess I'm wondering if there were a situation that came about within that 5-year period that was unconstitutional, wouldn't that automatically mean that they could redo it because it wouldn't be legal or allowed?
It means
You know what I mean?
they need to, yes.
Yes, so I guess I'm wondering why this extra permission is needed in the charter if it would already be happening anyway.
So I wasn't there, this is
Yes.
Tucker's bill. I wasn't in the Senate committee when they were going through some of this discussion. I think the concern was probably the language that came out of the House seemed to restrict their ability to do it more frequently if necessary, because the House language said that it could only be done once every 5 years. It couldn't be done more frequently. And so my understanding is the argument then as it goes to the Senate is, but wait, we could have situations where we need to do it more frequently than once every 5 years. That's why you have this change to say that it can be done when it's necessary. So it would be done, the language is following the census that's done every 10 years and whenever necessary to correct an unconstitutional, circumstance. So I think the Senate version is better addressing the question that you have. If they're required to do this because the Constitution mandates it,
Yeah.
then I think the Senate language would authorize that, whereas there's an argument to be made that the language that came out of the House initially may not have allowed that because it limited them to only once every 5 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
This is a little more nimble. I got Rep. Coffin, Rep. Hango, Hisco.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you knew what the percentage variance is, plus or minus, that would trigger this as well.
I do not. No, my apologies, not my portfolio area of expertise, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what the courts have said is kind of an acceptable margin at that point.
Rep. Hango?
I was looking for witness testimony, was unable to find it, but I've asked her assistant, but I'm now wondering about this, the word unconstitutional. That to me puts a big burden on this. I guess I wasn't really thinking about that aspect of this amendment. I was taking it a little more literally. I just don't know if I like the idea of the city council just whenever they want, whatever criteria they come up with, deciding to call for redistricting.
So I would say the language is limited in that it says that the city council can only change the election after the census or whenever necessary to correct an unconstitutional division of the population. So if it's not meeting one of those two criteria, then they wouldn't be able to just redraw them every year, every 2 years, because, there's some ulterior motive there. And then the second limitation I would say is it is limited to the data produced by the US Census Bureau. So they wouldn't be able to come up with their own information, or, a party of the city council wouldn't be able to come up with its own information from some other source than the US Census Bureau data to try to argue that something is unconstitutional. So it does have those, at least, tie-ins or limitations there.
Did you have a follow-up?
I guess I would be more comfortable if the word unconstitutional was taken out and just to correct a division of population or a significant division of population, and to have them have like a set of procedures within their own office as to what would trigger that.
So I think having that word unconstitutional may actually be helping alleviate some of your concern. I mean, if you were to remove that word, for example, and you just said whenever necessary to correct a division of the population or a significant division of the population, I think that would give the city council more leeway to make changes more frequently. If the city council felt that there was, some sort of, alteration of population within the city that may not rise to an unconstitutional change, but they still felt that they wanted to alter boundaries at that point. So I do think having the threshold be, it's necessary to address an unconstitutional division of population. I do think that is a higher threshold for the city council to have to meet in order to make the change, to make any alterations to the boundaries.
Okay, well, I'll probably defer to council on that because it's just kind of sticking with me that we're making exceptions to the rule for one municipality, and I foresee having to do that in others down the road.
And that's all then, Rep. Stone.
Nowhere in here does it say that they can add another ward if needed. That's sort of line. They already have several districts. compared to the rest of the state, and I wanted to make sure that they wouldn't. If the population got so large in the city of Burlington that they would need another ward. Does this allow them to add another ward?
I am not familiar enough with your municipal title or the city of Burlington's charter as to how and when they go about creating new.
Word boundary
Representative.
words themselves. This is only
It's only changing.
discussing the boundaries. This is not speaking to adding or consolidating words. This is only about the ones that exist. I believe there are 8.
And you don't know why they did like the 5-year thing, because the census is every 10.
Correct. So it's going back to, and again, my understanding, the amount of building that's going on right now and how that will shift the internal populations, whether it be a shift within the existing population or addition to the population, and allow them to, because when you exceed the number of residents within these defined boundaries, you're out of compliance-ish, right? So this allows them to do deviations to that more but also in accordance to US Census data provided. So, they're working off of numbers that are being produced outside of their sphere, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, I would say the amendment is, as I mentioned, the House version said that it couldn't be done more than once in a 5-year period. And the Senate version is saying it can be done after the census or in order to address an unconstitutional distribution of population. That's the change. And so you're just authorizing it to occur more frequently than once every 5 years. And my understanding, Mr. Chair, is similar to yours, is that you have certain housing developments that are currently under development in the city. And that if you have a limitation of saying you can only do this once every 5 years, one of these housing developments comes online, it moves a few thousand people into a given ward. Now you potentially have an argument that there's an unconstitutional distribution of the wards amongst the population. But your statutory language says you can't change that because we've limited you to only once every 5 years. Now the city can't make that required adjustment. Somebody would have to probably sue them, take them to court, get some sort of court order arguing that they must do a redistricting. And so what the Senate proposal is doing is saying, okay, we'll take away that 5-year limitation or that cap on only once every 5 years will allow you to do those redistricting whenever it's appropriate under the Constitution.
Mary Catherine, then Rep. Nugent.
I just wanted to say, it sounds like there's a good litmus test limited to the census information and the Constitution, and I just looked up, so I can talk about what I found about why we did this. That's okay, point of information since Tucker isn't here. So there was an unconstitutional population imbalance in city wards based on the 2020 census data, and the primary goal is to achieve less than 10% population deviation between wards to ensure equal representation while addressing community concerns over divided neighborhoods, such as in the South End. It also touches on Ward 8. A major focus is reducing the student population percentage in Ward 8, previously roughly 75% by shifting boundaries. That's my ward, and that is an area where there is a lot of population growth, and it changes a lot because of the student population. So I will just say that anecdotally, I've lived there for 10 years. And when I first lived there and bought a condo on College Street, there weren't as many people there. And now there's been more and more housing built up, even on the street I live on now, King Street. There's 2 huge housing structures or whatever that have been built in the last year and a half, like apartment units. So in my ward, district, whatever area where I live, there's been a huge population boom. So I'm not surprised that that's one of the reasons they need to bring this forward.
There's also the South End project
In less than 2 years.
over by
time.
where
And in the South End. So yeah, South End's one thing, but I can
That's
just tell you,
massive.
Ward 8 was
Yeah.
stated here as one of the areas because it's where the VFW used to be. They took down the VFW and now there's a huge housing project. It's where nobody's living at the VFW. Now there's going to be hundreds of people living in
That's
that building, in that same footprint.
They can't even rise.
Rep. Nugent, or I'm sorry, were you done, Rep. Stone?
Yes, I was
Okay.
just point of information that I looked up, so.
Appreciate it. Ripsta. Sorry, Nugent.
I'm done.
Come on, coffee. Do your thing.
I'm just sort of trying to clarify, and then I also have a question. So it seems like part of what we're sorting out here is that this applies only to Burlington, this type of situation. I guess maybe Rutland. There's a few other, are there any other municipalities that have wards where they elect their city council based on that in Vermont?
I'm sorry.
So I guess it seems like if it's constitutionally required to redistrict when the population changes, that would already be allowed. So I'm curious, is Vermont, do we even need to put that in the charter, or is it in the charter maybe erroneously to start with, that it's based on anything beyond just
So
federal law?
I think, so this bill is just addressing Burlington's charter. And so what I don't know is I don't know what other cities in Vermont, what their charters articulate.
Mhm.
What I can say is, I'll share real quick one more time. So I think the issue here is in Burlington's charter, you've outlined what the ward boundaries are. That's what all this language that's being struck, from pages 1 all the way down to page 10, 11. So you all have articulated directly in their charter, this is what your boundaries are. And they were amended, I believe, back in 2023. And so I don't know the reasoning behind, why the city wanted to go about doing this charter amendment and, why they're wanting to bring this specific type of language to you. My assumption is, as opposed to having to go through the charter change process every time they need or want to change those ward boundaries, which, as you all know, that's to go and be voted on by the individuals, come to you, bill introduced, go through the bill process. My assumption is they're just wanting to take that boundary out to then authorize the city council to go through that process without then having to do the charter change amendment on top of it. And so then if you're going to give them that authority in their charter, you all have the ability to limit, their, when and how they go about doing that. And that's what this bill did and then was subsequently amended. It's more focused on, okay, we're going to give you the authority to do it. You're not going to have to go through the charter change process, but we want to put some guardrails on how you go about it, when you go about it, what information you're utilizing when you go about it, et cetera.
It seems to me that if the Constitution is controlling all of state law, that would, supersede anything that a charter would say or even that Vermont law would say, so that it seems sort of unnecessary if it's already required and legal, encouraged to redistrict based on census data.
So the Constitution is just going to require that, again, each individual has an equal vote, essentially. So you can't have, election districts, whether, kind of municipal or at the state level. You can't have districts that, essentially provided to where certain individuals have more say-so in elections based on the fact that there are a lesser number of people there, or there are more representatives covering a smaller number of population, et cetera. That's really what the Constitution, would require. How the state or how the municipality goes about then drawing their lines, when they redraw them, et cetera, that's all going to be up to, the state. Elections, generally speaking, are governed at the state level and not governed by federal law. But, you're having to kind of underlay that with the fact that the Constitution does require this one person, one vote concept. And so even though the federal Constitution requires that, it's going to be up to the state. It's going to be up to you all with this charter as to what the boundaries are, when they need to be redrawn, et cetera, as long as you're remaining under that constitutional requirement of one person, one vote. And so I think that's really what this is more to address, as I'm reading it, is let's simplify this so we don't have the boundaries actually articulated in the charter. Let's give the city the authority to redraw them when it's appropriate. And then how do we actually articulate that in statute such that they're required to comply with this constitutional provision? And, I would say that that's what the bill is intended to do.
And I want to be conscious of time, but I have a hand from Representative Waters Evans.
It seems to me like this is going to make it easier and more accessible for people to vote and for them to have equal representation. And I'm all for it. Seems like it's just making things clearer and that we're not causing a problem we didn't intend to cause.
Rep Stone, then Pisano.
Cheater.
Oh, did she? Oh, apologies. Rep Pisano, then Stone.
So I'm reading what Nick just sent us regarding the testimony that we received before, and it says the proposed amendment would still require voter approval of ward and district boundary changes in Burlington, but it would no longer require charter change. This would facilitate the administration of city elections and would put the city on par with every other Vermont city in not requiring involvement from the legislature to determine ward and district boundaries. So.
Okay.
Rep Stone?
And I just want to say that, just did some quick research. This is pretty common, especially in college towns. So multiple states, red and blue, California, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, Utah, have tackled this issue and done it for this reason. A lot of those have college, a lot of the areas where they've done it. is in
Solid
college
footprint of
towns.
colleges, yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because on-campus housing and some of these older colleges is just not making the cut. So kids are having to move off campus and neighborhoods are seeing population booms happen as a result thereof. And they need to redraw the boundaries to make sure that they get it right. And they can't wait every 10 years because that puts them up to have a federal lawsuit against the city if they are messing things up. That's another reason it's being proactive instead of reactive. And
There's definitely a risk exposure there.
Yeah.
Rep Waters Evans?
Are we doing a straw poll?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
Well, in theory.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, I think it seems like we make a motion for that, or can we just say, I think we should move to
By the amendment favorable?
find it favorable with our thumbs.
Cool. Barring further comment, the table? Favorable thumbs on the amendment? That looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, J. Favorable. All right, that was a good little jaunt to get the brains going for the week. All right, good job, team.
Thank you.
We are on the floor. Mary Catherine Stone, the representative of Burlington, will be the reporter of the bill. Thank you for